Hi, I'm Martin Ludden, Executive Director of the St. Paul Neighborhood Network. We're here today on the SPNN Forum with Joe Spencer, President of the Downtown Alliance. Joe, welcome to SPNN.
Thank you so much.
Actually, I should say welcome back to SPNN. You have been here before.
It's not my first time.
So what's your former kind of affiliation with the organization?
So in the late 90s, there was a program here called Now Showing, where once a month we would showcase a variety of different arts happenings that were going on in St. Paul at the time.
Cool.
And I was an illustrious host.
So I'm following in a proud tradition there of illustrious hosts.
I don't think you're following anything, but no, I've always been fond of this organization, and I really appreciate the invitation. It's great to be back.
We're glad to have you. So you are the president of the Downtown Alliance. Can you tell us a little bit about what the Downtown Alliance is and kind of what you guys work on?
Sure. So we're a relatively new organization, but we're really cut out of the same mold as a lot of downtowns across the country have downtown-specific organizations. In Minneapolis, there's one called the Downtown Council, and you can find one like it in basically any place that you've been. There's an importance, of course, to citywide issues and to even regional issues, but especially the downtown business leaders, we're looking at all the opportunities and needs for the immediate community. It felt really important that we start an organization that's just going to focus on downtown St. Paul.
Right. And is there, so you said you're relatively new. Who's been filling that gap before? I mean, it seems like if this is something that is a best practice for downtowns, and Minneapolis has had the Downtown Council for so long, what took St. Paul?
So I think there's been kind of an evolution in St. Paul. Years ago, there was a downtown council, and then there was Capital City Partnership, many people remember, and even Riverfront Corporation filled the role of a downtown council. And for a variety of reasons, as organizations kind of go through their life cycle, it was time to start a fresh one, and so put together a new board, really made up of some of the business leaders, along with some of the public sector leaders. It's co-chaired by Chris Hilger, the CEO of Securian, and Mayor Carter. And even though, again, there's a kind of a private sector emphasis, bringing in some of the public sector leaders helps, I think, our role in advocacy and helps with alignment so that we're all kind of pulling in the same direction.
Yeah. Well, and like public-private partnerships bring more to the table than just a private partnership.
Exactly.
So, So what the opportunities that you're identifying and that you're working on? What are the big ones?
So as the organization got set up, there were sort of three lanes of work. One was around the downtown experience. What are the nuts and bolts things we can do? What are kind of immediate projects we can do and engage in to make an immediate difference? One around employer expansion. What's the work of going out and recruiting and retaining businesses and employers so that we can grow more jobs in downtown St. Paul? And then the third one was around creating what the state calls a special services district, what lots of communities call a business improvement district. Minneapolis calls theirs a downtown improvement district. Anyway, to create an improvement district, to explore what the feasibility, the viability of an improvement district in downtown St. Paul.
And what would a downtown improvement district in St. Paul, what would that bring to downtown that's not there now? So
we started out doing a lot of research about what are the needs in downtown, and what we found is that making some improvements to improve the way people feel around safety issues, but also just kind of housekeeping, making it clean and beautiful. But again, really, I think fundamentally improving the way people feel in terms of feeling welcome, feeling safe, feeling secure in the downtown environment. And as we look around the country, they're all pretty much the same. They all have that focus on safe and clean programming. And so when you go into a place that has an improvement district, typically you see what are most often called ambassadors. They're wearing a bright neon color uniform. They might have a pan and broom, or they might be just out on foot. but they're present in a downtown environment that could offer you directions, or could, again, sweeping up trash as they see it, removing graffiti immediately as it appears, and just really taking care of the basics, the housekeeping. There's Sarah Harris, who led the effort in Minneapolis. One of her first points was that, just as you see businesses or corporations invest in their lobby space, because that makes the first impression for their visitors and the last impression, so too the public spaces in our downtown make that first impression and leave that last impression as people are coming to do business, or to visit, go to a show, or what have you. Those first and last impressions are really important, and that's what an improvement district is designed to improve.
Yeah. Well, and downtown St. Paul has some really remarkable public space.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we're blessed in downtown St. Paul. It's one of the most charming places in all of America, and
there's no bias there.
Well, maybe there's a little, but I think it's true. I mean, it's something people, and not just me, but people from all over the state, people from all over the country, when they come to downtown St. Paul, they're really impressed at just all the charm. It's a friendly place. It's an open place. Everything is accessible. There's a lot of reasons to love downtown St. Paul. Yeah. But I think adding this layer of kind of enhanced services is going to be really important for us as we want to continue to grow more jobs and more vitality in downtown.
Right. So, how is the district funded? Where does the infrastructure for those ambassadors come from?
Sure. So, the basics of the organization, kind of our basic operating, really comes from our business partners, the folks who came together to start the organization, made a financial commitment to fund our basic operations. We've had a lot of generous support from the Knight Foundation, and other foundations, other philanthropic gifts have helped to support so far our work around demonstrating what this could look like. So last summer, with support from Knight Foundation, we hired a team of 5 ambassadors to be out from June, July, and August, and really give a sense of what this program can feel like. So that was all funded with philanthropy. But on an ongoing basis, the only real way for it to be sustainable, and the model that, again, you see throughout the country, is for the commercial property owners and the business tenants that have offices there. They pay a small fee that gets collected on the property taxes, and that pool of funds essentially gets controlled by the group of ratepayers. So it's run for business, like a business, for business, by business, to create those services, to create those additional enhancements, and that is how it sustains itself over time.
Okay. So there would be, a group of downtown, stakeholders, business stakeholders. They pool their resources that they get through this extra bit on the property taxes, and then who supervises? What's the management structure on that?
Sure. So that's how a bill becomes a law. In the case of how a business improvement district comes to be and get funded. So there's a fee or a charge that's collected on the property taxes by the county. The county passes that through to the city because it's technically, by state law, it's a city program. And then the city would create a sole source agreement with a group of the property owners that pay it, organized as a 501c6 nonprofit organization. That group would then deploy those resources, engage with the contractors, hire those services, as is all sort of defined in the management plan that would become memorialized in ordinance.
Right. So was that simple? Yes. No, that made perfect sense. Would the Downtown Alliance be a part of that structure?
So I think there's a role for us to play. I think it's clearly important to the property owners that they get to have some control and authority over the monies that they're paying in.
Right.
And at the same time, we want to make sure that we're coordinating and that we're building we're building an organizational structure that's going to be efficient and not duplicative. And so there'll be a role, I think, for the Alliance to play. We're likely to have a role in the implementation. And we're looking at different organizational models. But again, both are important. We both need to be coordinated, but also make sure that the people who are paying for it have the appropriate amount of control over their money.
So is this city ordinance, a county ordinance, state law? What
So
is?
there's a state law that authorizes the district,
Right.
and then it requires the city to enact a local ordinance.
Okay.
That would get more into the specifics or the particulars.
Gotcha. And is there, like, kind of at what point do you get to say go? Like, yes, let's do this, let's push for a state law?
So for us, again, the state law is already in place.
Okay.
So we're in the process of right now of talking to the property owners and to the private sector. Theoretically, if this continues to march forward, we'd be looking at creating an ordinance in the spring or summer.
Okay.
And for the program to be enacted in 2021. The specifics of the timing, I can't really,
Right.
I don't know just yet. But we'd be looking early as possible. You'd see the programs roll out would be 2021.
Okay, so probably spring 2021-ish, hopefully, because I don't imagine you're going to be rolling ambassadors out in January and February.
It's possible. You know, you raise a good point. Most of the places around the country, it is exclusively outside in the public realm. We have a little bit different setup with our Skyway system than many cities.
Yeah.
And so I think it's likely what we're hearing from our property owners is they do want to see some presence in the Skyway.
Okay.
And so our program will probably be built to sort of follow the pedestrian patterns.
Right.
So if it's a rainy day in the summer and most people are in the Skyways, you'll probably see more ambassadors in the Skyways. Likewise, if it's a beautiful day and they're outside, we'll be outside. And if there's a split, we'll try to navigate, find that right balance.
Get them raincoats and here we go.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, well, that makes a ton of sense. And I think the Skyway system is, I think, unique nationally to Minneapolis and St. Paul and does create a very different feel in those downtown spaces.
Yeah, the Skyway system is unique in just about every way. We're not the only cold weather city, but
Right.
we do by far, our two cities have the most extravagant and extensive, I should say, Skyway systems. And even between the two cities, they're quite different.
Right.
They're governed very much more as public space in St. Paul and private space in Minneapolis.
Okay. So, I'm sorry, you said public space in Minneapolis or?
Public in St. Paul.
Okay. So, and in those public spaces, if we have, ambassadors kind of filling that role and being present, do they take on, are there public safety duties that they absorb in that place too, or what's that look like?
Well, again, the whole program really has the emphasis on improving the way a place feels safe. And so that's a big part of what they do, but it's also important to note that they're not in the enforcement business.
Okay.
They're not going to play the role of police officers.
Right.
But as eyes and ears that are sort of spread out throughout the downtown, they really become a force multiplier for the police. They also, I think, are able to respond to certain issues that maybe today are taking police time away, but in an ideal world don't necessarily need a sworn officer
Right.
to deal with a given situation.
Yep.
And so while they're not in the enforcement business, we do think it'll have a meaningful impact and increase in the way police resources are used in downtown.
Okay. If you're just joining us, we're here with Joe Spencer, president of the Downtown Alliance. Thanks for tuning into the SPNN Forum. So, Joe, we talked a little bit about the Minneapolis Downtown Improvement District. Who else are you taking cues from? Like, kind of where did this movement start, and where do the best practices come from on it?
So it started somewhere in Canada, and I've heard that between the U.S. and Canada, there are over 1,000 improvement districts established. And St. Paul is the 64th largest city in America. Numbers 1 through 63 all have these supporting their downtown, their downtowns. And so it's not something that we're inventing. We have a lot of folks that we can learn from. Duluth has had a successful district in place for a while. Des Moines has one.
Okay.
Minneapolis is actually regarded as one of the best in the country. And I rarely want to sort of follow or copy Minneapolis in any way. I'm a loyal St. Paulite, but the reality is their team is fantastic. Again, they're well regarded, and I can't I can't say enough about how helpful they've been to us.
Yeah.
They're very generous with their time and sort of showing us the lessons that they've learned over the last 10 years. So we're really lucky to have them as neighbors.
Yeah, well, and it's, if you can follow somebody else, let them break some trail and figure out sort of, what to do and what not to do, all the better.
One of the things that I've described the DID in Minneapolis as being one of those rare political unicorns where literally everybody you talk to loves it. From across the spectrum, whether it's sort of liberals or conservatives, business leaders or community leaders, every stripe, people love the Business Improvement District, the Downtown Improvement District in Minneapolis, and so that also puts a little bit of wind in our sails.
Right.
It's not like we're battling uphill against an unknown. It's a proven model in our market, and so that helps quite a bit.
Right. So this will be an extra expense for downtown business, but it sounds like there's good value. It's a good value proposition.
That's the only reason for these business owners, these building owners, to do it, is that it is a good business proposition. Mm-hmm. This is not a donation. This is not a civic contribution. This is a way for the building owners and business owners to make an investment that's going to provide a return on that investment. When we talk to business leaders, people who are making decisions about where to put their offices, the thing we hear over and over and over again as their number one priority is to make sure that they can recruit and retain the talent they need to succeed. And that's across the board, from small startups to large corporations. Right now, the workforce, the talent needs that our businesses have and the way our demographic trends are sort of unfolding, that's what everybody needs to stay focused on. And this is a really effective way for them to improve the neighborhoods, the immediate surroundings of the office spaces where they're trying to get these workers to come and be a part of their company. So this is not, again, it's not a charity project. It's not a civic engagement. This is about making a smart investment for their needs as a business. Yeah,
and whatever that extra cost is, it's cheaper than hiring and training somebody new.
Yeah, there's certainly a lot of that, and I don't want to, it's a meaningful investment. I don't want to downplay the significant investment that it is for folks, and that's partly why it's important for them to be able to control how it gets deployed. But at the end of the day, again, what you see in 1,000 districts across the North America is that people are seeing it worth their while. There's an organization called the International Downtown Association, and we've seen numbers from them that something like fewer than 2% of these districts are ever sort of disassembled. And in Minnesota, at least, there's an annual opportunity if just 35% of the people paying into it decide it's not worth their while anymore. The businesses that pay into it control their own fate that way as well, and they can decommission the district if or when they choose. But the reality is they're pretty successful and rarely get decommissioned.
So who are you? What are you hearing from the business owners downtown and the building owners? Are they excited about this? Is everybody on board, or where do you sit with that campaign?
What we've seen a lot of I think openness. There's a kind of a range, right? There's some folks who are like open to it, and then there's some who are really enthusiastic. Yeah. There are a few that feel like, hey, my expenses are enough. I'm not interested. They're different kind of business philosophy, but we've identified, I would say, a significant portion of downtown. It won't be the entire downtown, but a significant portion of downtown who sees the value in it, understands how it is going to provide a return on that investment, and are open to going forward. So I'm optimistic right now that as we go through the process, we'll find the support we need.
Yeah. So are those pockets of support in downtown? I mean, more than pockets, but are they geographically contiguous, or how do you draw those lines?
You are allowed to sort of create some crazy gerrymandered kind of boundaries. I think ours will be pretty well cohesive. in and around the Rice Park district, a lot of those business and building owners, again, have expressed an openness to it. Securian, one of our largest employers, have been very helpful in us exploring this. I mean, I don't want to overstate their commitment because they haven't made one yet, but they've been really helpful in working and kind of leading conversation about if it were to be employed, how it would work. And so, again, it might not be the entirety. And I'll point out the state law makes it difficult to include or to require the participation from residential properties.
Okay.
And so there's a big part of downtown, and which, by the way, is fantastic that we're seeing all this growth in population in downtown. But where residents are concentrated, it requires a different conversation that we're thinking of as kind of a phase 2 of the conversation. Once we get something up and operating, then we'll go to those residential properties and see if we can get them to voluntarily contribute so that they can enjoy the same benefits as well.
Is there a threshold, like you have to get X percentage of owners or X percentage of like the financial center of downtown, or how does that, what's the mark?
So there's a couple ways to answer that. The state law actually only requires people representing 25% of the rate paid to petition in favor of it.
Gotcha.
And if 35%, people representing 35% or more of the rate paid have an objection, then the program is effectively vetoed. So really the threshold is more like 65%. And so that's, that's a super majority, and we only want to do this if it's something that, again, people are supportive of, because we're not trying to force this issue on anybody. We're just trying to help organize the conversation so that we can consider this thing that's been successful in so many other places.
Well, if it's forced, it probably won't work anyways.
Absolutely. That's not the point.
Yeah. So can you share kind of where you are now, or do you get to find that out as you take the next step forward?
We're looking at sometime this spring starting the petitioning process. And so once we have that, once we start down that path, then we'll know sort of where we stand. Right now, we've just had a lot of, really positive conversations where people are sharing about what their needs, what their priorities are, and just what specifically we could do to tangibly impact those things. Having those ambassadors out is really important. The other I would say for a lot of folks in our conversations, they have a real priority around a particular aspect of how the program is coordinated. So there's a piece of this that we've built into our kind of draft model we call the Fusion Center, or a Joint Communication Center. And this is, again, something that really people can clearly understand the value of and quickly get on board with. The idea would be we'd create a communication center where 3 things would happen. One would be dispatch for the ambassadors that are on the streets. So if you're on your way into your office and you see a mess or a stain on the sidewalk that is unsightly, you want to get that cleaned up, you would just call up the district. They'd send an ambassador out and get that cleaned up before the rest of your workforce arrives. Or if maybe you encountered somebody who's having a mental health crisis, instead of calling 911, if it didn't appear to be an emergency, you could engage with the ambassadors. We could perhaps network with some of the mental health specialists or social workers to get out and help with that individual. So again, really kind of sparing the law enforcement resources. So that's the first role, that dispatch role. The second is coordinating among the private security. So right now in downtown St. Paul, if there's an event in one building, let's say there's an unruly group of people that are asked to leave, once they walk out the door or across the skyway, they effectively disappear. There's not a lot of coordination amongst the private security. And so we would create a system where we're coordinating amongst those private security a lot more and creating a lot more efficiency, which we think would be really valuable. And then the third piece is just, again, where possible, coordinating amongst the buildings. There's a lot of visual camera feeds and things. So making sure that, as things come up, we're just working in better coordination and creating more efficiency. And so those 3 pieces of the Fusion Center are something that are really attractive, and we hear a lot of positive reviews about.
Yeah, well, that makes a ton of sense. So your next steps are to start the petitioning, and then does it go to city council? And do you have, I presume you have some good relationships there to work?
We definitely want to, once we get through the petitioning process, we've been engaging a little bit on the front end with our partners at the city and at the county. There's an expectation that if the private sector are going to make really meaningful contributions,
right.
That even though it's not required, that we would ask the city and the county to voluntarily participate as well, because the city and the county have a significant workforce in downtown
right.
as well. And we value that workforce, but we'd want them to pay their fair share.
Yeah.
So that would be a part of the process, and yeah, we'd look to go to the city for that ordinance sometime in the spring.
Cool. Where, if folks watching want to kind of find out more about either the Downtown Alliance or more about the process, where's a good place for them to go?
So if you're to go to our website, the St. Paul Downtown Alliance, it's STP St. Paul. No, what is it? What the heck is our STP Downtown Alliance? .org.
.org. Okay. We'll put that up on the lower third there.
Thank you for doing that. But if you go to our website, you can find out more about that, some of the work we've done, specifically around the pilot we employed last summer.
Okay.
We've got some great data about all the graffiti that got removed in those 3 months, all of the trash that got picked up, all the people that were assisted.
Right.
And you get a sense of the impact for a relatively small sample size of the program.
Yeah, and how big a geographical area did you cover last summer?
Last summer we were, I'll estimate probably 20 blocks.
Okay.
So again, relatively compact area.
Yeah.
Kind of from the Rice Park area over to Central Station, up to the 6th Street bus stops, and along to Ham Plaza. If you can visualize downtown, it's a relatively small pocket, but an important pocket of downtown.
Yeah. Well, Joe, thank you for taking some time out of your busy schedule to come talk to us. This is a great project. If you want to learn more about the Downtown Alliance or the Downtown Improvement District, you can visit stpdowntownalliance.org. You have been watching the SPNN Forum, and this is Joe Spencer, President of the Downtown Alliance. Thanks.
Thanks a lot for having me.
Thanks. So now